Science and supernatural horror. In the normal world, these two don't go hand in hand. If you're a scientist, you might not believe in the supernatural. And if you're a believer of the supernatural, well, it means you don't have the scientific temperament. But when it comes to fiction, both the genres seem to blend seamlessly. Science fiction combined with horror is the recipe of a successful movie. A combination of the two genres forms a deadly combo, which is certainly not for the weak-hearted. Sci-fi horror has rarely taken horror beyond the mere realm of Earth, and therefore the villains behind the horror causing the horror are no earthly beings either. From intergalactic spaceships to desolate planets and even time travel, today we've compiled a list of 45 such movies in which you can expect hair-raising stuff in the most unexpected places and environments, one of which is the vastness of space. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. Now, this is a small click for you, but for us, well, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Get out of the way, Leviathan!
Alien, 1979. One of the first movies on our list is the one that reinvented the scene when sci-fi horror wasn't even such a thing. Those who have watched it will instantly remember that infamous scene from the film, which is one of the most shocking ones in the history of sci-fi cinema. The chest-burster moment where Kane's last meal with his crew goes horribly wrong. That wasn't just horror, but more of a cinematic ambush brought to you by director Ridley Scott and writer Dan O'Bannon in the sci-fi horror Alien from 1979. Did you know that this moment was kept so raw and so real by the makers that not even the actors performing the scene knew what was going to erupt from John Hurt's chest? Well, Alien is full of shocks like this and certainly changed the sci-fi horror scene forever. The way it presented space-age futurism with raw claustrophobic fear induced through the corridors of a spaceship is quite chilling. The story begins with the crew, comprising Sigourney Weaver as Warrant Officer Ripley, Tom Skerritt as Captain Dallas, and John Hurt as Kane, returning to Earth aboard their spaceship Nostromo. Suddenly, they receive a mysterious distress call on a strange planet. While investigating, a strange alien species attaches itself to Kane and enters the spaceship. What this crew brings aboard seems small and dormant at first, but what it becomes later is the stuff of nightmares. Are they able to get rid of the alien, and what do they lose in the process? In a tense climax, Sigourney Weaver, as a strong, intelligent, no-nonsense Ellen Ripley, is fighting hard to get rid of the parasitic alien. She emerges as the only human survivor aboard, along with Jones, the cat. Her impressive performance shattered sci-fi gender norms of the times. The movie also boasts of a strong ensemble cast comprising Tom Skerritt, Ian Holm, Veronica Cartwright, and Yaphet Kotto in important roles. And the monster alien who ripped apart John Hurt's chest? Well, that was the brainchild of the surrealist H.R. Giger, who won an Academy Award for the best visual effects for his futuristic design. His alien doesn't make a lot of noise. It waits in the shadows, stalking and ready to bleed acid. No wonder that the chestburster scene felt so real. This 1979 release not only launched a franchise, but built a solid fan base in the sci-fi world, all while also being a feminist icon. The raw terror gave a terrifying warning that in space, no one can hear you scream. The Thing, 1982. What would you do if you came to know that your best friend wasn't even human? What if it was a space monster wearing their face? This is a recurring issue in the storyline of the 1982 sci-fi horror The Thing. Once you watch this one, you'll never trust anyone again. Directed by John Carpenter, the same genius behind Halloween, and written by Bill Lancaster, The Thing stars Kurt Russell as MacReady, a helicopter pilot stuck in Antarctica with a team of researchers. But they're not all by themselves. Something has just crashed in the ice. But it's not an ordinary alien. It's a shape-shifting monster, so dangerous that it can perfectly copy any human or animal. And hence, there's a constant threat throughout the movie that anyone could turn out to be the Thing. No one knows what's real anymore. Paranoia spreads like fire in sub-zero temperatures of Antarctica. The cold outside is deadly, but what's inside might be worse. Released in 1982, The Thing is loved even today for its gripping story. For the entire length of the movie, the atmosphere is just full of tension. Pure fear emanating from the mysterious creature whose design is disgusting but also genius. It turned out to be splendid, considering the special effects were entirely real and not CGI. The twisted faces, the melting of skin, and the tentacles coming out of nowhere. Everything looks horrifying. It's not just horror, but a psychological nightmare. The Thing returned for a 2011 sequel, although it wasn't as well received as the original. True horror fans will worship the original. And did you know that the movie even left its creators stunned while filming the dog thing scene? It turned out to be far more disturbing for the audience. If you're in a mood for a sci-fi horror that's smart, scary, and unforgettable, well, The Thing is waiting for you. Just remember, don't trust anyone. 2001, A Space Odyssey. What would you be more scared to encounter in space? An alien or a soft-spoken computer? 2001, A Space Odyssey, directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick in 1968, poses this very question. Co-written by renowned sci-fi author Arthur C. Clarke, it's not your usual alien-chasing kind of movie. Instead, it's slow, silent, and deeply unsettling. Starring Keir Dullea and Gary Lockwood, the film follows a space mission that takes a dark turn when the spaceship's super-intelligent AI, HAL 9000, begins to act strangely. HAL isn't a creature with terrifying claws or grotesque features, yet it still manages to unnerve audiences with nothing more than a calm voice and a single, unblinking red eye. 2001, A Space Odyssey was a film that changed everything. Before it, space was often just a backdrop in sci-fi cinema. Here, its vastness truly feels alive. The rotating sets, zero-gravity sequences, and groundbreaking effects make the film's direction and cinematography decades ahead of its time. So much so that it went on to inspire a wave of hugely popular and critically acclaimed sci-fi films, including Interstellar, Blade Runner, and Alien. In that sense, Kubrick's masterpiece became the Big Bang of sci-fi cinema. If you haven't seen 2001, then watch it, not for over-the-top action, but for the eerie silence and the slow-burning terror of a cold, red eye watching you all the time. Event Horizon 1997. We've discussed a few great sci-fi scripts till now, but wait till you hear about a spaceship which literally goes to hell and then comes back. Let's talk about the 1997 sci-fi horror Event Horizon, a classic which not only took space horror to newer dimensions, but transcended even the scientific side of it. Event Horizon was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who later became quite famous for his Resident Evil franchise. The film packs a stellar cast with Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, and Kathleen Quinlan in its roster. Each character has delivered a powerful performance, which only increases in intensity as the story spirals into chaos. Full credit to writer Philip Elsner for the exciting setup. It's the year 2047. A rescue crew is sent to find the spaceship Event Horizon, which vanished years ago during a secret mission to the star Proxima Centauri. Suddenly, the spaceship is found to reappear near the planet Neptune. Event Horizon is found, but the crew inside lies in a state of massacre. While investigating the bloodshed, the rescue crew also gets into a lot of trouble, suffering horrific hallucinations of what they fear or regret most. It's understood that the spaceship's drive must have opened a gateway somewhere beyond the known universe and brought something horrible back with it. This evil presence becomes the cause behind the crew killing each other brutally. How many will die before the spaceship is ever rescued? Event Horizon has literally taken the concept of a haunted house and applied it to a spaceship. Even the ship's design, inspired by Gothic cathedrals, is quite scary. As hallucinations and their personal demons start killing one crew member after the other, the film takes a deeply disturbing turn. The horror feels more raw and immersive, with the terrifying realism of real sets and spinning rooms. Many attributed this failure to the troubled production, with filming and editing being rushed by the producer Paramount Pictures, who wanted to release Event Horizon because their other movie Titanic was pushed to a later release. Anderson didn't like the hasty edits made by the studio's demands in the original 130-minute cut of the film. Even the critics didn't like it. And while Titanic did wonders upon its release, Event Horizon's actual legacy wasn't realized till it went on to inspire the Dead Space video games. If you're tired of clean space films, Event Horizon delivers something darker and far more terrifying. Tighten your seatbelts. The void is waiting. Solaris, 1972, Tarkovsky. Our next entry on the list can be considered as a prequel to Event Horizon. Both have similar plots, but really different release eras as well as origins. Solaris was directed by the legendary Andrei Tarkovsky and co-written with Friedrich Gorenstein, released in 1972. It's one of the most compelling Soviet sci-fi films of its time, which had turned space into a horror zone much before anyone else. Just imagine if your long-lost memories took shape and stood in front of you. Terrifying, isn't it? The film stars Donatas Banionis as psychologist Chris Kelvin, who's sent to investigate a string of unusual incidents aboard the Solaris space station. His findings are chilling. Most of the crew is dead, and even the surviving crew members are tormented by severe hallucinations of their own repressed memories. Then, the unthinkable happens. Kelvin's deceased wife, Harry, appears alive, but she's not quite human. It's not a dream. It's the haunting plot of Solaris, which transformed space travel into a maze of horror. It builds slowly, letting the tension creep in on the viewer. Endless corridors and long silences feel like eternity. There are no laser battles or evil empires to be seen, but only a story of grief, guilt, and what it truly means to be human. Is Solaris trying to communicate, or is it merely reflecting the subconscious of its crew members? The movie really established space horror, and is also one of the inspirations behind the critically acclaimed Interstellar. The way it shows the mind as the greatest monster is stuff of the ages. However, oddly enough, despite its international acclaim, Tarkovsky himself himself considered Solaris as one of his lighter works. Talk about being modest. But make no mistake, Solaris is a genre-defining, haunting experience that'll stay with you. Life, 2017. Since the last 2 decades or so, humans have been seriously eyeing Mars as their new future home. But what if the first sign of life on the red planet isn't as friendly? The 2017 sci-fi release Life explores the possibilities. Director Daniel Espinosa, along with writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, has built a claustrophobic space thriller which stars heavyweights like Jake Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Ferguson, and Ryan Reynolds. A group of scientists aboard the International Space Station discover the first proof of extraterrestrial life on Mars in the form of a dormant cell. They name the tiny and adorable cell Calvin. But then, Calvin starts to grow. He's fast, smart, and lethal. As it evolves, one thing becomes clear. Calvin doesn't want to be studied. As it turns into the ultimate predator inside the cramped space station, there's nowhere to run. You can feel the tension rising with one sacrifice after another until the climax, where 2 survivors trap the villainous cell in separate pods. Calvin's fate remains unknown, with one of them drifting into space while the other lands on Earth. In 2017, the movie brings back the good old-fashioned paranoia in space feeling the audience had been missing since Alien. Only this time, the science feels a little too real, especially the zero-gravity kills, which are terrifyingly inventive. Also, hats off to the visual crew for creating Calvin in just 2 months' time. They went through countless concept art sketches before settling for the final version of Calvin as an invisible and nightmarish form. Here's something even crazier. Calvin's movements were based on actual microscopic aquatic life, and Espinosa and his team studied jellyfish and octopus behavior to design its terrifying evolution. Conspiracy nuts still joke that Life is a stealth Venom origin story. Sony never confirmed it, but the internet loves to speculate. Bottom line, if you're into movies that escalate from wow to we're all doomed in minutes, this one is unmissable. Sunshine, 2007. The next movie on our list is directed by Danny Boyle, who swore that he would never do sci-fi again after this. Boyle and writer Alex Garland deliver a mission to reignite the dying sun in the 2007 release, Sunshine. It's 2057, and our sun is dying. To save all of humanity, Murphy, Michelle Yeoh, Chris Evans, and Rose Byrne are sent on the mission, which involves trying to survive while reigniting the dying star aboard their spaceship Icarus II, fronted with a mirrored stellar bomb. The movie starts hopeful, but tension slowly builds as each mistake costs lives. Even the captain of the ship is incinerated while repairing a shield. A mysterious survivor from an earlier mission brings along his own horror. The climax, a psychological breakdown of the crew as they near the sun itself. And this is the most interesting part about the existential crisis in the movie. The sun is the main villain here. No alien monsters or other scary figures. The movie's visuals, blinding lights, sepia tones, and tight corridors are unique in their own way. The cast spent 2 weeks training together, doing scuba diving and other physical exercises in order to achieve some sort of isolatory experience. For director Danny Boyle, the experience was so intense that he never made another space thriller. However, despite a strong cast and stunning visuals, the movie tanked at the box office. But when has box office success been the sole parameter of a film? Sunshine is still remembered for its emotional weight and philosophical story. If you want space flicks that burn slowly inside your mind, this one's a solar meltdown you must watch. Pandorum, 2009. Imagine waking up on a spaceship and your own mind starts playing games with you. This is the plot of the psychological thriller come space horror movie Pandorum, directed by Christian Alvert and written by Travis Malloy. The movie begins with Dennis Quaid and Ben Foster disoriented in hypersleep aboard the spaceship Elysium. They remember nothing and can't find the other crew members. Despite this, it seems like they're not alone. A dangerous creature is stalking the corridors while the ship's systems are failing. As they move deeper to understand what's happening, they learn of a space-induced psychosis called Pandorum. Each corridor is hiding something, and every sound triggers fear. It's as if a spacecraft in space meets a psychological puzzle. The crew realizes that they can't trust their own mind due to the Pandorum. Isolation and time have warped their sanity. Can they beat this space-induced psychosis? The terrifying practical effects of the movie weren't CGI, but designed by the same team behind Hellboy. Pandorum has some really passionate fans for its smart writing and an interesting climax. The movie truly showed that space horror works best when the brain and heart are causing the terrors and not just aliens. Pitch Black, 2000. The next movie on our list is a treat for Vin Diesel fans. He's the protagonist in this 2000 flick Pitch Black, where a spaceship named Hunter Gratzner is carrying several passengers along with a highly skilled and infamous criminal. Unfortunately, the spaceship happens to crash land on a deserted planet. Some of the crew are able to survive, but soon find themselves in deep trouble when they realize that they're surrounded by mysterious creatures who want to devour them. These creatures are quite dangerous, but the good thing is that they're vulnerable to light, so they come out to hunt only only at night. Things take an interesting turn when it's found out that the criminal Riddick's surgically altered eyes allow him to see in the dark. The group is forced to rely on the convict to save their lives. But can Riddick be trusted? The entire movie now becomes a story of escaping these alien creatures while a rare total eclipse occurring every 22 years is about to occur. Vin Diesel has done an excellent job portraying Riddick alongside Radha Mitchell, Cole Hauser, Claudia Black, and Keith David. Director David Twohy has also beautifully captured the tension built on an original story by writer brothers Ken and Jim Wheat. The story flows fast, from a sudden crash to an unlikely bond of survival, and then an all-absorbing eclipse which gives birth to the chaos. Pitch Black has turned the sci-fi survival genre on its head, catapulting Riddick into an unlikely hero who's also returned in subsequent sequels of his own. Diesel's portrayal of Riddick is just magnetic, a tough, troubled, and dangerous savior. He's as monstrous as any real one could be. And did you know that Diesel actually dislocated his shoulder while pulling a tarp in stunt scenes and popped it back on camera? Some CGI enhanced it. The stunt was real. Fans still remember Pitch Black as a raw gem for doing so much with so little. Despite its low budget, Pitch Black was able to launch the Riddick franchise, games, and much more. Interstellar, 2014. Nolan directing a movie is always a grand affair. It's a complete cinematic experience with stunning visuals and a gripping story. And what do we even say about his 2014 flick, Interstellar? This movie might not exactly be classified as horror, but it definitely freaks out the mind in its own epic way. Especially the way it shows space becoming an inescapable and mind-boggling labyrinth is amazing. Nolan has donned the director's hat, perfectly collaborating with his physical brother, Jonathan Nolan, and science advisor Kip Thorne to bring out this masterpiece. Set in a near future where Earth is dying, ex-pilot Joseph Cooper, played by Matthew McConaughey, is sent through a wormhole with Anne Hathaway as NASA scientist Dr. Amelia Brand on the Endurance spacecraft. They're carrying almost 5,000 frozen embryos with them to find and colonize a habitable planet and ensure humanity's survival. Many of these worlds are strange, where time moves differently. Every hour on one world equals 7 years on Earth. As years slip away rapidly, Cooper and Amelia find themselves completely isolated and lost in the vastness of the universe. With insufficient fuel and time running out, they must complete a slingshot around the black hole Gargantua, which will cost them 51 years due to time dilation. Interstellar not only has a gripping story for the ages, but excellent visuals to support it. When you see the black hole Gargantua, it looks grand and scientifically accurate thanks to Kip Thorne's equations, creating such a realistic model. And did you know the famous McConaughey crying scene when he watches his daughter age without him was executed in just one take? Talk about an acting masterclass. After watching Interstellar, you just sit there, shaken by the sheer vastness of the universe. And that's Christopher Nolan's magnum opus for you. Moon, 2009. Think your job is lonely? Try mining the moon alone for 3 years. Duncan Jones's Moon, released in 2009, is small scale but massive in impact. Sam Rockwell portrays Sam Bell, a worker stationed alone on the moon to harvest helium-3 for Earth. He's all alone, except for a chirpy AI companion named Gertie, voiced by Kevin Spacey. Sam's life is quite routine until one day he crashes his rover and wakes up to find another him walking around. Sam realizes that he isn't alone, because he was always meant to be not alone. He's a clone, and as the clones begin to piece things together, they hatch a plan to break free from the endless loop. Moon tells the unbelievable story of stolen identity in space. The film was shot in just 33 days with a $5 million budget. The production might be modest considering it's a sci-fi film, but it's quite successful in leaving a huge emotional weight behind, especially Sam Rockwell's performance, which can easily be classified as one of the best solo performances in sci-fi history. Even the lunar base was built using miniature models and not CGI. Perhaps this eerie realism is what makes Moon a modern cult classic. Aniara, 2018. There is no planet B. We all know that. So, what if we lost Earth someday and drift forever? We see this predicament in the 2018 Swedish-Danish science fiction film Aniara, written and directed by Pelle Kagerman and Hugo Lilja. Aniara, which is based on a 1956 poem of the same name by Nobel Prize nominee Henry Martinson, is set in a dystopian future where Earth has been rendered uninhabitable, prompting mass migration from Earth to Mars. A luxury spaceship carrying refugees from a ruined Earth to Mars encounters an accident along the way and veers off course into the endless void. Weeks turn to months, years pass. The crew starts to lose hope. People even turn to religion, and then in turn towards violence. All this is too much to witness for a sentient AI on board named Mima, which was designed to simulate peaceful memories from Earth. Watching the human despair, even Mima suffers a breakdown. The way civilization is decaying aboard the spaceship mirrors the way humans on Earth are collapsing without direction. The movie is frightening, not for what it shows, but for the hope and identity it slowly takes away. The psychological decay and depression of the crew happen in slow motion tension and are quite painful to watch. Aniara is one such movie that'll leave you emotionally stranded and searching for answers within. Coherence, 2013. The next movie on our sci-fi horror list was shot in just 5 days, and yet it's one of the scariest low-budget sci-fi thrillers ever made. Imagine a dinner party where reality splits into 8 versions of itself. Written and directed by James Ward Burkett, this film follows 8 friends gathering during a comet's close pass. Lights flicker, phones glitch, and then suddenly doppelgangers appear. Each time someone steps outside, they might return to a different version of the house because multiple realities are overlapping. The movie grips you with paranoia that the version of you sitting at the table isn't the same one you started with. Coherence proved that you don't need a spaceship to do space horror. The idea of parallel timelines collapsing and intermingling is enough to create one of the most unsettling sci-fi puzzles ever. The film was produced without a proper script, with the actors receiving secret character notes each day of the shoot to trigger real confusion, conflict, and improvisation. Coherence is one such creepy flick that gets scarier the more you think about it. High Life, 2018. The next on our list is the kind of story in a sci-fi thriller that's least expected. We're talking about the Robert Pattinson-starrer 2018 flick, High Life. Several prisoners are sent on a doomed voyage toward a black hole in the name of science and reproduction experiments. Yeah, it's quite messed up. Most of this group of criminals who are serving death sentences are tasked with the goal of extracting energy from a black hole. They're being used as guinea pigs by a scientist for her strange experiment in which she's trying to create a child in space through artificial insemination. This begins a series of unfortunate incidents aboard the spacecraft where members of the crew are either killed or commit suicide. Finally, only Pattinson's character Monty survives on board with a child, which is actually his. The final scene, Monty and the child are drifting near a black hole with an uncertain fate. You'd expect some aliens or other unknown entities in space threatening human survival, but High Life shows quite the opposite. There's no villain more terrifying than humans themselves. The movie shows space as a blank mirror, reflecting only trauma and emptiness. Even legacy-wise, it's divisive. Some call it a masterpiece, others too disturbing, but it's undeniably bold. And did you know Dennis took 15 years to make this film, waiting until effects tech could catch up with her vision? High Life is not a fun ride. It's hypnotic, slow, and deeply uncomfortable, but it'll stay with you like a scar. The Cloverfield Paradox, 2018. For the next flick in our list of spine-chilling space horror, we have a chaotic addition to the Cloverfield universe. The movie takes place on board the Cloverfield Station, where scientists are testing a particle accelerator to solve Earth's energy crisis. But instead, they accidentally tear a hole in the multiverse. Directed by Julius Onah, written by Oren Uziel, and produced by J.J. Abrams, the movie features Gugu Mbatha-Raw leading a diverse cast as reality begins to collapse. Body parts are found inside walls, worms inside people, and crew members emerge from alternate dimensions. The Cloverfield Paradox perfectly blends sci-fi with physical horror and paranoia. The space station turns from hope into a giant cosmic mistake. Dimensions bleed together, time loops, and by the end, Earth itself becomes unrecognizable. The movie connects to Cloverfield lore in bizarre ways. It even had a surprise Netflix release right after the Super Bowl, which made streaming history. The Cloverfield Paradox may not be flawless, but it's packed with its own WTF moments and multiverse madness. It's definitely a popcorn chaos ride through sci-fi horror. Love, 2011. Well, someone rightly said that you only need the light when it's burning low. This movie from 2011 will make you believe in the saying. Imagine floating alone in a space station with no contact forever. Produced by alt-rock band Angels and Airwaves, Love is a poetic space horror where loneliness is the real villain. Directed by William Eubank and starring Gunnar Wright as astronaut Lee Miller, the story follows his descent into isolation after losing contact with Earth aboard the ISS. Days turn into weeks, then months. Supplies run low. Reality begins to warp. Through old letters and a Civil War diary, Miller discovers a deeper, time-bending mystery connecting his isolation to past human events. It's the story of just one man losing grip on his mind. Beautifully shot on a micro-budget, the movie was literally made in Eubank's parents' backyard. It's since earned cult status for its tone and haunting visuals. All the sets were constructed from salvaged junk and foam, with the final visuals achieved using only natural light and in-camera effects. Love isn't your typical space thriller. It's a diary from the extremes of human existence. Watch it when you want to feel the endless void of space. The Signal, 2014. In a series listing the best sci-fi horror, how can alien captivity be left behind for long? Welcome to the 2014 flick The Signal, which begins like a mystery thriller. 3 college students chase down a hacker across the desert, but once they reach an isolated shack, everything goes black. Nick, played by Brenton Thwaites, wakes up in a sterile lab, limbs missing, and with absolutely no clue how he got there. Lawrence Fishburne appears in a hazmat suit, calm but suspicious. Then the sci-fi horror hits. Strange tech is implanted in Nick's body. Is there something outside the lab? Who is watching? And is any of it real? Another one of William Eubanks' classics, The Signal quickly transforms from a techno-thriller to an alien experiment nightmare. The suspense builds with each scene until the jaw-dropping truth reveals that the crew has been abducted onto a massive alien craft all along. What makes it really terrifying is the slow reveal. The movie was made for just $4 million and still pulled off stunning VFX sequences, including Nick's robotic legs and the final sky-tearing climax. The Signal is a stylish, strange, and unforgettable alien abduction movie that never lets you get comfortable. Oxygen, 2021. Talking about survival thrillers, we move on to the next sci-fi horror movie on the list. Imagine waking up locked in a cryopod with no memory and with oxygen running out. That's also the name of the movie. Oxygen, directed by Alexandre Aja, is a French survival thriller set entirely inside a coffin-sized pod. Melanie Laurent plays Liz, a woman who wakes up with no idea who she is or why she's trapped. The AI assistant Milo offers no real help, and her oxygen levels are dropping fast. As she struggles to piece together her identity, flashbacks trigger. She's part of a colonization mission in a post-apocalyptic world where Earth is no longer livable. She was never supposed to wake up. As the clock ticks, her memories return. She's not alone in space, but she may be the last hope. This claustrophobic nightmare earns its place for turning limited space into maximum suspense. There's no villain, just the pod, the AI, and Liz's own panic. Laurent filmed the entire movie during COVID lockdowns inside a single set. Director Aja said the pressure was so real, even crew members had to step out due to panic attacks during filming. Oxygen is sleek, stressful, and deeply human. No wonder it'll leave you gasping for breath. The Midnight Sky, 2020. The world has ended. There's a last man left who's trying to warn astronauts not to return. Directed by and starring George Clooney, The Midnight Sky is a thoroughly engaging post-apocalyptic sci-fi film based on the 2016 novel Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton. The movie takes up the global catastrophe on Earth concept with space. Clooney plays Augustine, an aging and terminally ill scientist stationed in the Arctic who discovers a NASA ship returning to a post-apocalyptic Earth. He's shown with a young girl by his side as he treks across the frozen Arctic Circle to reach a stronger antenna. Meanwhile, the crew in space, led by Felicity Jones, is oblivious to the catastrophe. Augustine races to send a warning before it's too late. There's also an emotional angle associated with Clooney's character Lofthouse. In the climax, as he's looking at the sunset with the child, Iris, she vanishes, revealed to be just a figment of his imagination. This is a manifestation of his own guilt for neglecting his daughter. The Midnight Sky is not too action-heavy, but definitely exploits the theme of loneliness quite well. The movie received mixed reviews from critics, but was named one of the 10 best films of 2020 by the National Board of Review, and at the 93rd Academy Awards, it was nominated for Best Visual Effects. The visuals are indeed gorgeous amidst the soul-crushing stakes of the story. The Midnight Sky is a quiet apocalypse, slow, poetic, powerfully haunting. Why do you think NASA stopped going to the moon? This movie has a terrifying answer. Apollo 18 is a hidden gem in the found footage cinematic technique. Written by Brian Miller and directed by Gonzalo Lopez Gallego, it presents itself as real footage from a secret lunar mission that never officially existed. The setup: 3 American astronauts, Warren Christie as lunar module pilot Captain Benjamin Anderson, Lloyd Owen as Commander Nathan Walker, and Ryan Robbins as Commander Module pilot Lieutenant Colonel John Gray, are sent on a covert expedition to deliver a classified payload on the moon's surface. But once they arrive, things start to go wrong. Mysterious footprints, a dead cosmonaut, and a tiny rock-like creature that can infect and kill. Paranoia sets in as the moon becomes a trap. The climax? Nobody's coming back. The film turns the desolate moon into a horror landscape using only crackly radio chatter and confined lunar modules. The movie used real declassified Apollo-era tech designs to build its sets. It also sparked online conspiracy theories about hidden moon missions and the hundreds of rock samples returned from previous Apollo missions given to dignitaries, now missing. Is any of it true? Apollo 18 is the creepy story about what if this really happened that lingers long after the credits. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. How do you fight an enemy that looks exactly like you? Philip Kaufman's remake of the 1956 classic hits harder than ever in its terrifying 70s version. Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, and Jeff Goldblum headline this weird tale of aliens duplicating humans in their sleep. Each is a perfect biological clone of the person replaced, only devoid of any humanity. The moment you close your eyes, you can be replaced. The movie begins with subtle tension when infected people start acting strange with fuzzy memories and emotions gone. They're infected by a parasitic alien race that's abandoned its dying planet and now taken the form of small seed pods with pink flowers before transforming into a human host. The clones are everywhere. The climax, iconic. That final scream from Sutherland haunted generations. Kaufman's bold attempt at recreating the 1956 film of the same name is quite convincing. It's like watching humanity disappear in plain sight, just in color this time, and happening in the posh setup of San Francisco. Cinematographer Michael Chapman has also done a job worth mentioning while capturing the noir feel of the original in color. And there's a whole lot of relatability and nostalgia for Star Trek fans, as the movie also features the legendary Leonard Nimoy as Dr. David Kibner. Invasion of the Body Snatchers really redefined psychological sci-fi horror, influencing later titles like The Thing, The Faculty, Us, and many more. The movie was so good, it's been named among the greatest film remakes ever made. Simply put, this is a required viewing for any sci-fi horror fan. If you haven't seen it, be warned, they're already among us. War of the Worlds, 2005. Next on our list is the 2005 science fiction action thriller War of the Worlds. This Steven Spielberg movie takes H.G. Wells' classic novel and turns it into a blockbuster. Tom Cruise plays Ray Ferrier, an American dock worker trying to save his children when extraterrestrials invade Earth and devastate cities with giant war machines. A young Dakota Fanning and Justin Chatwin play their roles effortlessly as the terrified kids caught in between an alien invasion. The towering alien tripods are cold, efficient, and terrifying, emerging only to vaporize humanity. The movie catches pace from the word go, with lightning storms, EMP blasts, ground ruptures, and vaporized crowds giving the real feel of a survival horror. The aliens don't just invade Earth, they unravel society. And even when humanity hides underground, the horror follows. Spielberg's genius is on full display in the use of perspective. Everything's shot from Ray's terrified point of view, making the audience feel as powerless as he does. Trivia: War of the Worlds isn't subtle. It's a grand, crushing sci-fi terror shown through the eyes of a father just trying to save his children and reunite them with their mother amidst a collapsing world. The film is Spielberg's third on the subject of alien visitation, along with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, and E.T., the Extraterrestrial, 1982. With War of the Worlds, you're in for a bumpy ride with survival horror wrapped in family drama. Under the Skin, 2013. She looks human, but she isn't. And you're next. Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin from 2013 is less of a movie and more of a trance. Scarlett Johansson drives around Scotland picking up lonely men whom she flirts with before leading them to a strange black void where they disappear, literally melt. Turns out Johansson is an alien, but not with tentacles, vicious teeth, or a distorted face. She wears human skin, copies our looks, but doesn't understand feelings at first. Slowly, even the alien inside her starts to observe and think like humans. You sympathize with her, even as she kills in a cold and dreamlike atmosphere. The movie has its fair share of aggressive sexuality, where the women seem very vulnerable, but then it's the desire of the men that is punished. Many have even called it a reverse take on contemporary rape culture, where violence against women is so common that violence against men is often underrated. Even though a commercial failure, the movie is acclaimed for Johansson's ruthless performance. It's been named the best film of the year by various critics, and was even ranked 61st on the BBC's 100 Greatest Films of the 21st Century list. Glazer also wrote the film along with Walter Campbell, based on the 2000 novel by Michael Faber. After watching it, we know why Glazer took over a decade to develop the writing. Many scenes were real. Johansson actually drove around with hidden cameras, talking to non-actors on the streets of Glasgow. Their reactions, totally unscripted. The movie's hailed as a masterpiece, blending seduction, sci-fi, and horror like no other. Watch it alone and be prepared to feel watched back. Splice, 2009. What if Frankenstein made his monster in a petri dish and raised it like a child? Splice, directed by Vincenzo Natali, is about two geneticists, Clive Nichol, Adrian Brody, and Elsa Cast, Sarah Polly, who mix human and animal DNA to create a hybrid named Dren. What begins as a scientific breakthrough turns into something far more twisted. Dren is innocent, curious, and childlike at first, but as she grows, things get messy. She turns out to be much smarter and stronger than expected. Dren reveals she has carnivorous tendencies and even develops retractable wings as she enters adolescence. The film plays with the idea of parenting something that looks human but isn't. It's painful to watch the parents bond with Dren and then fail her. Delphine Chaniak's performance as Dren is haunting and animalistic, yet looks innocent. Trivia: Splice is straight-up physical horror with a brain. It pokes at ethics, ego, and desire. It'll leave you fascinated at first and then creeped out soon after. The Faculty, 1998. Who wants to attend high school? Anyways, now imagine if your teachers are alien parasites. Directed by Robert Rodriguez and written by Kevin Williamson, our next movie on the list is the 1998 sci-fi horror, The Faculty. It's a teen horror classic with a sci-fi twist. The movie kicks off when students at Harrington High School notice their teachers acting weird. Soon, they realize the faculty has been infected by an alien that controls minds. Not only that, it's spreading fast. Several students from an unlikely squad join to stop the invasion. Their weapon? Drugs, literally. Seems like the aliens can't survive caffeine-like stimulants, so they fight back with homemade hits. The Faculty once again offers the kind of psychological horror you'd expect from a sci-fi movie, but in a very different setting. Talking about the cast, it's stacked with Josh Hartnett, Elijah Wood, Salma Hayek, Famke Janssen, and even Jon Stewart in cameo roles. The Faculty is fast and freaky. It taps into that high school fear and turns it into full-blown alien horror. Species, 1995. Coming up next on our list is the 1995 flick Species, starring Ben Kingsley. This one is pure alien horror, narrating the story of a hybrid human created by scientists who turns rogue. They created the perfect woman, but now she wants to mate and kill. Scientists combine human and alien DNA to create Syl, Natasha Henstridge, a beautiful humanoid designed for study. But she's not only growing rapidly, she's also showing signs of violence. As the scientific team plans to kill her before she can cause damage, Syl escapes and begins hunting men to reproduce. She isn't just seductive, she's lethal. Her alien avatar, designed by H.R. Giger, is the stuff of nightmares. Ben Kingsley plays a psychic who's helping the team of scientists track her down. Does the chase end? How far does this hybrid affect the human race? Species really blends the concept of sci-fi with the most primal human fears. It's Alien meets Basic Instinct, with one of the most chilling transformations ever put to screen. The scenes are intense and hair-raising. Today, the movie has managed to launch a franchise of its own. The Vast of Night, 2019. Ever heard a sound so strange it could rewrite history? Set in 1950s New Mexico, The Vast of Night is a low-budget indie marvel that unfolds like an old mystery. A teenage switchboard operator, Sierra McCormick, and a young DJ, Jake Horowitz, intercept a strange audio frequency during a quiet night. What they uncover could explain years of UFO sightings. Directed by Andrew Patterson, the film relies on long takes, vintage dialogue, and eerie silence. You don't see much, but you feel everything. The tension is almost magnetic. Interviews with frightened townsfolk build the mystery layer by layer until the shocking finale. The Vast of Night proves that great sci-fi horror doesn't always need monsters. Just a sound, a sky, and the fear that we've never been alone is enough. The film was made for just $700,000 and shot in under 3 weeks. Patterson submitted it anonymously to festivals under a fake name, but today it's recognized as a slow-burn UFO thriller that can really get under your skin. Sputnik, 2020. Our next movie is a chilling Russian sci-fi horror directed by Igor Abramenko. It's thrilling, futuristic, yet sinister. The movie stars Oksana Akinshina as Tatiana, a young doctor recruited by the Soviet military to assess a cosmonaut. This cosmonaut has survived a mysterious space accident and returned to Earth safely, but with a dangerous organism living inside him. He's brought to a secret military facility. As a bold neurophysiologist tasked with figuring out what's wrong, Tatiana discovers the truth. The cosmonaut is hosting a parasitic alien that only emerges when he sleeps. Creature feeds on fear. What happens next is a terrifying tale of sci-fi mixed with classic alien horror. The alien design was inspired by snakes and translucent sea creatures and took months to create. Although the visuals in the film were meant for theaters, it became a streaming hit during the pandemic. Sputnik felt refreshingly different to audiences in the sci-fi genre, so much so that it became the 5th most rented film on Apple TV in 2020. The Terror from Beyond Space, 1958. For our next, we have this 1958 sci-fi shocker that accidentally changed the genre forever. A rescue mission to Mars leaves Colonel Carruthers as the lone survivor of his crew. Everyone is doubting him for killing the rest of his crew members in order to take their rations and water, but the Colonel claims something else. According to him, a strange creature slaughtered everyone else. Nobody believes him until it sneaks aboard their ship for the ride home. Now, trapped millions of miles from Earth, the crew find themselves hunted. Directed by Edward L. Kahn and penned by Jerome Jerome Bixby, who would later co-write Star Trek classics, the movie stars Marshall Thompson as the weary Carruthers, alongside Shirley Patterson, Kim Spaulding, and Anne Doran, all trying to keep calm while an alien monster stalks them in their own spaceship. Why is this a must-watch? Because it's the grandparent of Alien. Before Ridley Scott's Xenomorph terrorized the Nostromo, it had already perfected the formula. At the time, most Alien movies were Earth under attack stories. This one flipped the script. That shift from invading armies to personal survival horror is one of the reasons this film became a blueprint for the genre. You can feel the claustrophobic fear emanating from the screen. 60-plus years later, it's still a thrilling ride into the foundations of space horror. If you love Alien, this should be your starting point. Leviathan, 1989. Consider this. You're 6 miles under the ocean and your crew finds a sunken Russian ship. Most people would think about digging for lost treasure, but what the sunken ship brings up is something much worse. Leviathan, directed by George P. Kuzmatos, takes us into the deep-sea mining station Shack 7, where a team led by Stephen Beck, played by Peter Weller, is wrapping up the last days of an underwater mission. They discover the wreck of a Soviet vessel named the Leviathan and bring back a mysterious safe containing documents and a few bottles of vodka. Seems quite harmless, right? But wait until 2 crew members fall ill after drinking from one of the bottles. Soon, a horror fest begins, with bodies mutating into something unrecognizable. The cast includes all the big names from the 80s: Richard Crenna, Amanda Pays, Hector Elizondo, Daniel Stern, and Ernie Hudson. But it's the creature itself, brought to life with Stan Winston's effects team, which makes Leviathan unforgettable. The movie stands out in its genre by reinforcing the no-escape formula even more tightly. Not being able to escape in space is difficult, but escaping underwater is a different ballgame altogether. In space, no one can hear you scream. But underwater, the walls will literally implode if you try to run. And that's why the claustrophobic pressure, both physical and psychological, pushes you to the tipping point. By the time the climax hits, what's left of the crew makes you realize Leviathan isn't just a monster movie. It's a reminder that sometimes the worst thing you can do is open a door you were never meant to find. Galaxy of Terror, 1981. Imagine a rescue mission where the rescuers start dying in ways pulled straight from their deepest fears. That's Galaxy of Terror, a 1981 Roger Corman production which is disturbing in its own ways. The movie kicks off with the crew of the Quest, who are sent to a distant planet to locate survivors of another crashed spaceship. As the crew enters, they find the environment somehow reading their minds. And not only that, it also analyzes whatever you're most afraid of, brings it to life, and kills you with it. The cast is a mix of sorts, with Edward Albert as Cabron, Erin Moran from Happy Days, and in one of his earliest film roles, a young Robert Englund. You can also see Sid Haig with his silent but imposing presence. Every death seems to be customized. One crew member is crushed, another is devoured by giant maggots, and yet another engulfed in flames. For a while, you'll believe it's a slasher movie, but what makes this film important in the genre is its commitment to surreal horror within an advanced sci-fi setup. The idea of an alien force preying on the mind resonated through later sci-fi movies like Event Horizon and Sphere. The atmosphere throughout the movie is such that you never feel safe in any corner. Even the lighting feels like it's part of the threat. Now, Galaxy of Terror might not be very polished. Doesn't need to be. Its raw and inventive nature is what makes it unforgettable. Proof that sometimes the scariest monster is the one your own brain serves up. Supernova, 2000. Supernova feels just like the title for a sci-fi movie, doesn't it? Definitely is an exciting one. The movie is directed by Walter Hill, although he later withdrew his name officially, citing creative differences with the production. It stars James Spader as pilot Nick Van Zandt, Angela Bassett as Dr. Kayla Evers, who were the crew members aboard Nightingale 229. They receive a rescue signal coming from light years away, which should have been ignored, but it gets answered. And answering that call sets off a chain of events that turns the rescue mission into a death trap. The crew faces increasing horror every minute amidst the growing reality that the next jump might be their last. While Supernova struggled in production, its core concept taps right into sci-fi horror's sweet spot of isolation and a strange object you can't destroy. The film's special effects are not merely CGI, but a mix of early 2000s CGI with practical sets. Only if Supernova hadn't been better edited, it might have been more of a classic. However, it's still a fascinating piece of sci-fi horror history. Dead Space, 1991. Long before Dead Space became the legendary horror video game franchise of today, it was a 1991 low-budget sci-fi horror film which had nothing to do with the games. Directed by Fred Gallo and starring Mark Singer of Beastmaster fame, it's a semi-remake of Roger Corman's 1982 flick Forbidden World. The movie literally used recycled sets, costumes, and even some of the plot from Forbidden World, but still managed to carve out its own weird charm. We're aboard a remote research station orbiting a barren planet, Fablos, and in the research station, the the scientists happen to do the only thing they shouldn't have. A botched experiment results in the creation of a virus which infects humans and converts them into monsters. As they send distress calls, Commander Steve Krieger, played by Mark Singer, along with his robot sidekick, Tin Pan, respond to the emergency. However, on the way to Fablos, their craft is attacked and damaged. When they finally arrive on the planet, the virus escapes and infects one of the lab workers. Are they able to complete their rescue mission? The movie retains the original main storyline and character setup of Forbidden World with only minor differences. Much like the original, some of the space battle effects were also taken from Battle Beyond the Stars. The visual effects team wanted to create a never-before-seen space monster, but the movie was shot in just 3 weeks. Realism was achieved by developing an inner harness allowing for rapid mobility of the actor in the monster suit. The transformation of humans into alien monsters was achieved with GM foam and hair inserts. Dead Space feels like an upgraded version of Forbidden World, and no wonder it's achieved cult status. The Last Days on Mars, 2013. Just before Matt Damon's The Martian, The Last Days on Mars showed the lethal side of the Red Planet. The movie begins as a slow, almost serene story about the final hours of the first manned mission on Mars. The crew is almost ready to go home. But on the last day, a crew member of Tantalus Base claims to have made an astonishing discovery: fossilized evidence of bacterial life on the Red Planet. Not wanting to let the relief crew claim all the glory, he decides to disobey orders and heads out on an unauthorized expedition to collect further samples. This routine excavation quickly turns into disaster when the ground collapses and he falls into a deep hole. When his colleagues learn about it, they attempt to recover his body. But when another crew member vanishes, the team starts suspecting that the life form they discovered is not without danger. It should have been the discovery of the century, except it's also a death sentence. Virus, 1999. Next on our list of sci-fi horror, we have the 1999 release Virus, directed by John Bruno and starring Jamie Lee Curtis, William Baldwin, and Donald Sutherland. A Russian research ship, the Volkov, is found adrift in a typhoon by a tugboat crew. It's soon discovered that the ship has actually been taken over by a sentient alien energy source that came from the Mir space station. This entity is using the ship's robots to convert the Russian crew into cyborgs, killing some of them in the process. The surviving crew members learn that the alien is planning to use the ship to take over a military base. Seeing the rising stakes, they decide to sink the Volkov. Will they be able to destroy the alien? Virus takes the haunted ship in space formula and transplants it into the waters of the South Pacific. What starts as a rescue operation becomes a battle for survival against something strange. The movie merges the horror of the machines from the Terminator franchise with the horrific violence of the Alien franchise. It taps into that primal fear of losing humanity, not through death, but through transforming into something inhuman. The performances are perfectly nuanced, and the film holds a tight space with just over a 90-minute runtime. In the vast, indifferent world of space, that's a virus no firewall can stop. Forbidden World, 1982. We told you about the movie Alien from 1979, right? Now imagine its cheap remake filled with sex, nudity, and low-budget special effects. That's Forbidden World for you. The film can be classified as science fiction erotic horror. Not just horror, but erotic horror. The story follows Mike Colby sent to the planet Zarbia, where scientists have been engineering a new life form to solve a food shortage crisis. And because this is space horror, the mission has to go very wrong. The genetically modified creature, nicknamed Subject 20, mutates rapidly, evolving into a shapeshifter and begins tearing through the research station's crew. How many will survive? What makes Forbidden World stand out is the horror it induces on a relatively modest budget. The movie was shot under the working title Mutant over the course of a 20-day shooting schedule for just under $1 million. And you might think it's not a serious film, or just an alien ripoff, but it actually won the 1983 Saturn Awards for Best Low-Budget Film, Best Makeup, and Best Special Effects. The part alien, part human creature is a full nightmare. Forbidden World is like tossing The Blob, Alien, and Star Wars into a blender, then adding a pinch of nudity and a splash of gore. It might taste a little funky, but it's damn satisfying. Invaders from Mars, 1986. Sci-fi horror and remakes. There's just something about the genre's plot that just begs for retelling for new generations. That's exactly what happened with Invaders from Mars, 1986, a remake of the 1953 classic of the same name. The movie was directed by Tobe Hooper from a screenplay by Dan O'Bannon and Don Jacoby. It stars Hunter Carson, Karen Black, Timothy Bottoms, Lorraine Newman, James Karen, Bud Cort, and Louise Fletcher. We see it all through the eyes of young David Gardner, played by Hunter Carson, who wakes in the middle of the night and witnesses a UFO landing just beyond the hill near his home. From that moment, his once familiar world changes forever. Soon after he tells his father about his mysterious sighting, he notices that his father comes back, changed. He's cold, oddly obedient, and has strange marks on his neck. Then it spreads. His teacher, his classmates, the police. One by one, everyone in David's small town starts turning into something alien. What's happening? Is this all a dream, or is his town really being overtaken by aliens from Mars? Hooper plays the film like a dream, somewhere between a kid's fantasy movie and an adult horror film. It's fun and full of that whimsical 80s sci-fi aesthetic. Elaborate creatures and visual effects supplied by Stan Winston and John Dykstra were impressive and convincing for their era. The head alien in the tunnels is genuinely scary. Invaders from Mars generally received mixed to negative reviews from critics and was a box office disappointment. However, like many other movies on this list, it's developed a cult following over the years. Screamers, 1995. Screamers from 1995 is our next pick in the list of sci-fi horror. It's the year 2078. A war has created a toxic wasteland on the planet Sirius 6b, where autonomous killer robots called Screamers roam. After finding an offer for a truce, Commanding Officer Joe Hendrickson and new recruit Ace Jefferson set out to meet their enemy. They're joined by a young boy, David, who they later discover is a new human-like type of Screamer. Paranoia grows among the survivors as they learn the Screamers can now mimic humans perfectly. Hendrickson and a woman named Jessica are the last ones left. After Jessica sacrifices herself to save him from a lookalike Screamer, Hendrickson escapes on a shuttle, only to realize the teddy bear he brought with him is also a Screamer. Directed by Christian Duguay and written by Dan O'Bannon, the movie stars Peter Weller, Roy Dupuis, and Jennifer Rubin. The plot's based on Philip K. Dick's 1953 short story, Second Variety, and for the most part, the script is solid. It pushes the story further into the horror genre, setting an underlying sense of unease in motion. The film isn't perfect. The ending is a little difficult to comprehend, but it remains an underrated gem. It's a shame because it's one of the best sci-fi horror films of the 90s. In a perfect world, Screamers would be getting the same re-evaluation that Event Horizon is currently enjoying. A sequel, Screamers The Hunting, was released in 2009, although it didn't do too well at the box office either. Saturn III. Picture this. Kirk Douglas, Farrah Fawcett, Harvey Keitel, and a killer robot, all trapped in a claustrophobic research station on Saturn's moon. That's Saturn III, directed by Stanley Donen. The plot is part romance, part horror, and part literal mechanical nightmare. Douglas and Fawcett play Adam and Alex, scientists working in isolation to grow food for Earth. Their peaceful life is shattered when Captain Benson arrives with Hector, a massive experimental robot. They're shocked to discover that Hector is powered by a neural link to Benson's mind, which makes him extremely unstable and obsessively fixated on Alex. Once Hector starts operating on Benson's impulses, things go out of hand. The robot learns too quickly, and it's not loud or screeching, it just emerges from the creeping shadows. The fact that its motives are human in origin makes it even more unsettling. The film's production design is a strange mix of futurism and industrial textures, creating a space that somehow feels both advanced and oddly primitive. While Saturn III wasn't well received by critics upon release, it's gained a cult following over the years. There's something deeply unnerving about it. The horror isn't just about alien invasion, but about the darkness in the human mind that's suddenly been given steel arms. And in the quiet of space, there's nowhere to run. Queen of Blood, 1966. Queen of Blood certainly sounds like a Dracula movie title. It is indeed a vampire story, but not about vampires on Earth, but in space. Directed by Curtis Harrington, the movie narrates a nightmare straight out of a pulp magazine cover. Before the term space vampires was even a thing, Queen of Blood was already draining the blood out of the genre. The story begins rather silently at first. It's the year 1990, and space travel is going great, especially when humans had landed on the moon just 20 years earlier. Space technology and communication experts receive a distress signal from outer space, which is found out to be coming from an alien race who are sending their ambassador to Earth. However, before they could do that, the alien spacecraft crashes on Mars. Astronauts are sent on Mars to investigate. Inside the alien spaceship, they find something which will haunt them till the end. It's a green-skinned female alien. Mysterious, attractive, and quite lethal. She's here to feed on the humans. Queen of Blood was such a breakthrough among the space movie genre of its times. In the 60s, space was quite an optimistic place for cinema, but this movie completely changed it. After all, it predates Alien by over a decade and still flirts with the same setup: an isolated crew and an alien trying to kill them all. The alien waits like a spider waits in his web and pounces as soon as the prey wanders close, killing them brutally. In many ways, Queen of Blood defined an early branch of space horror which has a predator lurking in the distance amidst the stillness of deep space. Stranded, 2013. The next movie on our list is yet another creepy and paranoid crisis. Stranded begins with adventures on a research base with a small crew in the eerie silence of a lunar mining base. But Christian Slater's low-budget 2013 thriller not only narrates the simple survivor setup but takes it into a far more dangerous zone. When a meteor shower damages the crew's base, they discover that one of the incoming rocks had spores contained inside. These spores can multiply rapidly, and one of the astronauts, Ava Cameron, is infected immediately. But that's not even the terrorizing part. After being infected with the spore, Ava experiences a rapidly fast pregnancy and just a few hours later delivers a strange alien life form which escapes the lab soon after. When Ava tells others about her horrid experience, no one on board believes her, but the alien hadn't really escaped. It comes back, kills another crew member while taking his shape. What follows is an escape mission for the crew from the killer alien. Are they able to get out of its clutches? Stranded tells the story of paranoia in a world where your enemy is a shapeshifter and none of your fellow crew can be trusted. Christian Slater's done a commendable job portraying a desperate commander, General Gerard Braukmann. His performance complements the screenplay by Christian Piers Betley, who also acts as the producer, and direction by Roger Christian. Every shadow in those narrow, dimly lit corridors feels tense. The movie doesn't give you sprawling shots of the moon, but can definitely give you the creeps with the feel of metal walls closing in. It's a reminder that in the right hands, a small budget can make the walls feel even tighter and the silence even louder. Dark Star, 1974. Much before John Carpenter terrified the world with Halloween or The Thing, he made Dark Star. This bizarre yet brilliant fusion of stoner comedy combined with cosmic horror is also considered one of his best works. 4 bored astronauts undertake a decades-long mission to destroy unstable planets. However, their ship, the Dark Star, is literally falling apart. Explosions rock the hull, the toilet doesn't work, and even the ship's commanding officer has to be cryogenically frozen after he dies in one such accident. The rest of the crew is deeply disturbed and spend their days hopelessly on board while still continuing with their mission of destroying rogue planets. And then there's a hilarious alien in the form of a beach ball who attacks one of them but gets killed in the process. The movie's full of such moments, which are supposed to be horror, but seem rather funny. Not to mention the AI-powered bomb, which malfunctions along with all other things on board and has to be convinced not to blow up until it does eventually destroy Dark Star. The conversation between man and machine becomes a weirdly profound philosophical debate about existence, purpose, and perception. It's funny, yeah, but it's also quietly horrifying because the bomb's cold logic feels unnervingly real. Dark Star is genre-defining because it tears apart the clean, noble vision of space from the golden age of sci-fi. Instead, it shows the loneliness, boredom, and creeping absurdity of drifting too long in the void. It paved the way for the likes of Red Dwarf and Galaxy Quest, but also planted seeds for Carpenter's later, darker explorations of isolation and madness. It's the rare film where you can chuckle at an alien shaped like a beach ball and then find yourself staring into the abyss, wondering what it means to be truly alone out there. The Black Hole, 1979. If Disney produced something in the year 1979, you can generally expect it to be safe and family-friendly. But our next movie is certainly not. Instead, it's a hypnotic and eerie descent into madness. We're talking about the timeless classic The Black Hole, directed by Gary Nelson for Walt Disney Productions. The movie begins innocently enough with the crew aboard the spacecraft USS Palomino returning to Earth after its deep space exploration. While on their way to Earth, the spacecraft happens to stumble upon a black hole. Not only that, but hovering right at the very edge of the black hole, Palomino finds the abandoned research vessel Cygnus, which was thought to be lost years ago. But the deeper they step inside, the more the Cygnus becomes less a ship and more a haunted castle, which is adrift in the endless void of the black hole. At its center is Dr. Hans Reinhardt, who claims to have mastered the gravitational forces around the black hole, being the sole survivor aboard Cygnus. However, there's something eerie about his genius obsession. His crew comprises silent, obedient robots, but are they really as obedient? The truth is a pure nightmare. The film oozes horror with its flickering lights and an ever-present sense of trouble. The shocking violence that ensues is etched into the minds of every kid who saw it in 1979, expecting a happy Disney ride. But the climax is what cements the black hole as genre-defining. It's both beautiful and deeply disturbing, a space odyssey that's bound to end in cosmic chaos. After all, it was the first Disney movie to receive a PG rating. Maximilian Schell as Dr. Hans Reinhardt and Anthony Perkins as Dr. Alex Durant shine in their roles, written by Jerry Day. Also, the computerized camera technology used by Disney to create the visual effects was surreal enough to be nominated for 2 Academy Awards, one for Best Cinematography and the other for Best Visual Effects. For the year 1979, Black Hole was an amazing experience. However, despite that, Disney never went for a sequel because it would have been too dark for the brand. Hardware, 1990. Last but not least, the next movie on our list of 45 genre-defining space horrors is the cyberpunk nightmare from 1990. Directed by Richard Stanley, Hardware follows the story of a self-repairing robot who goes rogue in a post-apocalyptic slum. In these neon-lit slums, survival is tough, and more so if technology is able to outlive humans, or even worse, turn against them. A strange robotic skull from the irradiated desert is picked up by a scavenger and sold as scrap to an ex-soldier, Mo, played by Dylan McDermott. Mo buys it as a gift for his artist girlfriend Jill, played by Stacey Travis. However, unknown to them, the robot skull is not an ordinary thing. It's actually a military kill bot belonging to the Mark 13. They were designed for the singular purpose of exterminating whatever comes their way, and the robot skull doesn't stay dead for long. It reassembles itself piece by piece in Jill's apartment with whatever parts it could scavenge, and it doesn't mind using human body parts for its resurrection. The robot is on the kill. However, like the other sci-fi movies, there are no starships coming in here for the rescue. This makes for a pure claustrophobic horror, where the glint of metal could be heard in every vent and corner. The movie doesn't just flirt with cyberpunk, but fully commits to the subgenre. The outside world is choking under the environmental collapse due to corporate control and government neglect, while the horror on the inside is as intimate and relentless as it can get. The Killbot was surely genre-defining. While the mainstream sci-fi movies from the 90s showed a brighter side of technology, Hardware fueled horror with dirt of Mad Max and the mechanical fear of the Terminator. It proved you could create a horror universe from a single room. Cyberpunk horror definitely doesn't need vast cities. It only needs one machine with its sights set on humans who have nowhere to run. Marvelous verdict. The 45 movies we've listed here are the ones that have literally defined the sci-fi horror genre. Most of them have their horror situated in space, while others are more earthbound. Whatever it is, the blend of science fiction and horror is really tantalizing. You watch hair-raising horror in the most unexpected places. Spaceships and alternate worlds, which seem all scientific and clean, but there's something lurking out there with the ability to terrorize. Let us know how many from our countdown you've watched. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone. 2013.